This story begins with a rejection and ends with a question. In between, there's a $15 million deal, a kayaking disaster, an ex-girlfriend who won't stay gone, and a decision that risks everything. If you're looking for a predictable romance, this isn't it. If you want something real, something messy, something that might actually restore your faith in taking chances, stay with me. You won't regret it. The crystal chandeliers of Zuma Miami cast dancing reflections across the polished silverware as Alexander Chen adjusted his tie for the third time in 5 minutes. The scent of seared wagyu and truffle oil hung in the air, mixing with expensive perfumes, and the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore just beyond the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. South Beach glittered outside like a promise of celebration, but Alexander felt only the tight knot of anxiety in his stomach. "You seem nervous," Victoria said, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the white tablecloth. Her red dress probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and she wore it with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how stunning she looked. "Just thinking about the company," Alexander lied, patting the small velvet box in his jacket pocket. At 32, he had built Technova from a garage startup into a multi-million-dollar artificial intelligence firm. He had conquered boardrooms and venture capitalists. Surely he could handle proposing to his girlfriend of 2 years. Victoria's phone buzzed for the 5th time since they sat down. She glanced at it, a small smile playing at her lips, before she looked up at him with those calculating green eyes. "Alexander, we need to talk." Those 4 words. Never in the history of relationships had those 4 words preceded anything good. Alexander felt the velvet box suddenly weigh 1,000 pounds in his pocket. "I have been thinking," Victoria continued, her voice smooth and rehearsed, like a prepared statement to shareholders, "about us, about where this is going." "Actually, I have been thinking about that too," Alexander said, his hand moving toward his pocket. "Maybe he could salvage this. Maybe if he just showed her the ring—" "I am seeing someone else," Victoria said flatly. The words hit him like a physical blow. Around them, other diners laughed and clinked glasses, oblivious to the small destruction happening at table 17. Through the windows, fireworks were already starting over the ocean, some eager celebrants jumping the gun on midnight. "What?" Alexander managed to say. "Jonathan Whitmore, you know him. Yale grad, family money, actually has time for a relationship." Victoria dabbed her lips with her napkin, leaving a perfect red imprint on the white linen. "You are married to your work, Alexander. I need someone who can give me attention, someone who understands my social needs." "Jonathan Whitmore?" Alexander felt his face flush. "The guy who still uses his father's credit card at 35? Who has never worked a real day in his life?" "At least he knows how to live," Victoria shot back. "When was the last time we did anything fun? Everything is always about Technova. Your meetings, your investors, your precious algorithms." She stood up, smoothing her dress. "I am done being second place to a computer screen." "Victoria, wait. Oh, and Alexander?" She leaned down, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt louder than a shout. "Jonathan is here, at the bar. I told him to meet me at midnight." She straightened up, her voice returning to normal volume. "Happy New Year. I hope you and your company are very happy together." She walked away, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with the finality of a judge's gavel. Alexander sat frozen, watching her cross the restaurant and actually kiss, Jonathan Whitmore at the bar. The trust fund playboy wrapped his arms around her waist with the smugness of someone who had won a prize he never had to work for. Alexander became acutely aware of the stares. The couple at the next table quickly looked away. A waiter paused mid-stride, unsure whether to approach. This was Zuma Miami on New Year's Eve. Everyone who was anyone in Miami's social scene was here. By tomorrow morning, his very public rejection would be all over social media. "Sir?" A soft voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. "Are you all right?" Alexander looked up to see a young woman in the restaurant server uniform, black shirt, black slacks, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She had warm brown eyes that held genuine concern, not pity. Her name tag read, Sophie. "I am fine," Alexander said automatically, though his voice cracked on the word fine. Sophie glanced at the 2 untouched glasses of champagne on the table, the unopened menu where Victoria had been sitting. And then toward the bar where Victoria and Jonathan were now laughing loudly. Her expression softened. "Would you like me to bring you something? Maybe something stronger than champagne?" She asked it quietly, discreetly, as if offering him a life raft instead of just a drink order. "Whiskey," Alexander said. "The oldest bottle you have, and maybe just box up whatever the chef recommends. I do not think I have much of an appetite anymore." "Understood," Sophie said gently. She hesitated for just a moment, then added, "For what it is worth, sir, anyone who would do that to someone does not deserve them in the first place, especially not on New Year's Eve." Before Alexander could respond, she was gone, moving efficiently between tables. He watched her work, the way she smiled genuinely at an elderly couple, how she smoothly handled a difficult customer at another table, the economical grace of someone who had done this job thousands of times. When she returned with his whiskey, a beautiful amber pour of a 25-year-old Macallan, she also brought a small plate. "The chef sent this, on the house. He said anyone having the night you are having deserves the good empanadas." Alexander looked at the golden, perfectly crimped pastries. They smelled incredible, savory and rich with hints of spices he could not quite place. "These are not on the menu. Chef Marco makes them for staff sometimes. His grandmother's recipe from her restaurant in Little Havana back in the day." Sophie set down a small bowl of green sauce. "This is his special chimichurri. Fair warning, it has some kick." "Thank you," Alexander said, and he meant it for more than just the food. Sophie smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes and created small crinkles at the corners. "Everyone deserves some kindness on New Year's Eve, Mr. Chen, Alexander Chen. And please, just Alexander." "Well, Alexander, I hope next year is better than tonight." She started to walk away, then paused. "And that woman? She is going to regret this. I can tell." "How can you tell?" Alexander asked, surprised to find himself genuinely curious. Sophie looked back at him, that warm smile still in place. "Because she just walked away from someone who notices the little things. You said thank you to me 3 times already. Most people in here?" She gestured subtly to the dining room. "They do not even make eye contact with servers. That tells me a lot about a person." As she moved away to attend to other tables, Alexander took a bite of the empanada. It was delicious, crispy on the outside, tender and flavorful on the inside, with the chimichurri adding a bright, herbaceous heat that cut through the richness. It was real food, made with care, not just expensive ingredients arranged artfully on a plate. Outside, fireworks exploded in brilliant colors over Biscayne Bay. Through the windows, Alexander could see crowds gathering on the beach for the countdown. Inside, glasses were being raised, champagne corks were popping. At the bar, Victoria kissed Jonathan Whitmore again as midnight struck. Alexander took another sip of his whiskey and watched Sophie navigate the chaos of the restaurant with practiced ease, bringing joy to strangers on the biggest night of the year. For the first time since Victoria had dropped her bomb, Alexander felt something other than humiliation. He felt curious, intrigued even. It was not how he had expected to start the new year. But somehow watching this stranger show kindness for no reason other than it was the right thing to do, Alexander thought maybe, just maybe, Victoria walking away was not the worst thing that could have happened to him tonight. Maybe it was the best thing. Alexander woke up on New Year's Day with a headache that had nothing to do with the whiskey and everything to do with his phone. 53 notifications greeted him before he even opened his eyes fully. The morning sun streaming through his Brickell Avenue penthouse windows felt accusatory, like it was judging him for still being in bed at 9 in the morning. He scrolled through the damage. Screenshots of Victoria and Jonathan at Zuma had already made their way through Miami's social circles. Someone had even posted a video. Thankfully, it did not include his face clearly, just the back of his head as Victoria walked away. The caption read, "New Year, new man for Victoria Sterling." Poor guy never saw it coming. "Fantastic," Alexander muttered, tossing his phone aside. His apartment felt too big, too empty, too everything. The minimalist decor that Victoria had insisted on now seemed cold and sterile. White walls, glass furniture, abstract art that cost a fortune and meant nothing. When had his life become a showroom instead of a home? His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Marcus Thompson, his best friend and Technova's chief operating officer. "I saw the posts," Marcus said without preamble when Alexander answered. "You okay, man?" "Define okay," Alexander replied, walking to his espresso machine, a top-of-the-line Italian model that Victoria had chosen because it looked good in the kitchen, not because either of them knew how to use it properly. "On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to hide in your apartment and avoid humanity?" "Solid 15. Marcus laughed, but it was sympathetic. "Cannot let you do that, brother. Do you have the Riverside Capital meeting on Monday? Jenkins has been emailing all morning about the presentation." Alexander groaned. "Right. The Riverside Capital meeting. $15 million in potential funding hung on that presentation, and he had spent exactly 0 minutes preparing for it over the holiday break because he had been too busy planning a proposal that never happened. "I need coffee," Alexander said. "Real coffee, not whatever this machine makes." "There is a place in Wynwood," Marcus suggested. "The Grindhouse, supposed to be amazing. Meet me there in an hour?" "Fine," Alexander agreed, knowing Marcus would not take no for an answer anyway. "But if anyone recognizes me and asks about last night, I will tell them Jonathan Whitmore still uses training wheels on his bike. See you soon." An hour later, Alexander found himself navigating the colorful streets of Wynwood, Miami's arts district. The neighborhood was famous for its murals, massive, vibrant artworks that covered entire buildings. Even in his foul mood, Alexander had to admit the area had character, so different from the glass and steel world of Brickell, where he spent most of his time. The Grindhouse was tucked between a vintage clothing store and a gallery featuring abstract sculptures made from recycled materials. The cafe itself was small, with mismatched furniture that somehow worked together, exposed brick walls decorated with local art, and the rich aroma of freshly roasted coffee beans that hit Alexander the moment he opened the door. And there, behind the counter, wearing a casual t-shirt and jeans instead of server blacks, was Sophie. She looked up as the door chimed, and her eyes widened in recognition. "Alexander! Sophie!" Alexander felt his face flush. Of all the coffee shops in Miami, of course he would walk into hers. The universe clearly had a sense of humor. "Small world," Sophie said, a smile playing at her lips. "Or small city, anyway. What are you doing in Wynwood?" "Meeting a friend. He recommended this place." Alexander approached the counter, suddenly very aware of his wrinkled t-shirt and the fact that he had barely glanced in a mirror before leaving. "I did not know you worked here too." "I do not, actually. This is my day off. I'm just covering for my roommate Emma for an hour while she runs an errand." Sophie wiped down the espresso machine with practiced efficiency. "The universe has a funny way of bringing people together, I guess." "Or torturing them," Alexander muttered. Sophie laughed, a genuine warm sound that made the cafe feel even cozier. "That bad, huh? How are you feeling after last night?" "Like I should have stayed in bed," Alexander admitted. "My phone has been blowing up all morning with people who saw what happened." "People are terrible," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "They love drama when it is not theirs. Give it 3 days. Someone else will do something stupid, and everyone will forget about your thing." "My thing? Is that what we are calling public humiliation now? Would you prefer dramatic romantic implosion, relationship apocalypse, the great rejection of New Year's Eve?" Sophie's eyes sparkled with mischief. Despite himself, Alexander smiled. "You are enjoying this." "A little," Sophie admitted. "But only because you are smiling now instead of looking like someone kicked your dog. Speaking of which, do you have a dog?" "No." "Shame. Dogs make everything better. Anyway, what can I get you? And please do not say something boring like a regular coffee. Emma will kill me if I waste good beans on boring orders." "What do you recommend?" Alexander asked, genuinely curious. Sophie leaned forward conspiratorially. "Can you handle real coffee? Not the dessert drinks people usually order, but actual bold. This is what coffee should taste like coffee. Try me." "Brave man." Sophie turned to the espresso machine with the confidence of an artist approaching a canvas. "I'm making you a cortadito. It is a Cuban espresso with steamed milk, strong enough to wake you up, smooth enough to enjoy. Emma sources these incredible beans from a farm in Colombia. You will never want that sad penthouse espresso again." "How do you know I have a penthouse?" Alexander asked. Sophie shot him a look. "Alexander, you were at Zuma on New Year's Eve ordering 25-year-old whiskey. I am good at reading people. It is part of the job." She worked quickly, her movements economical and precise. The espresso machine hissed and steamed, filling the air with an intoxicating aroma. Within minutes, she slid a small cup across the counter to him. "Try it," she urged. Alexander took a sip. The coffee hit his tongue with a perfect balance of bold and smooth, strong but not bitter, sweet but not sugary. It tasted like care had gone into every step of its creation. "This is incredible," he said honestly. "Right?" Sophie's face lit up with pride. "This is what I want to do, eventually. Open my own place. Not fancy like Zuma, but real. Somewhere people can come and feel at home, you know. Good coffee, good food, good atmosphere. Somewhere that matters to the neighborhood." "That sounds amazing," Alexander said. "Why are not you doing it?" Sophie's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "Because amazing ideas and reality are two different things. You need money, connections, business plans, investors who take you seriously instead of just seeing a server with dreams." Before Alexander could respond, the door chimed again. Marcus walked in, his eyes immediately finding Alexander, and then widening comically when he saw Sophie. "Am I interrupting something?" Marcus asked with a grin that Alexander knew meant trouble. "Marcus, this is Sophie. She is—" Alexander paused, realizing he did not actually know how to finish that sentence. "She is the server who was kind to me? She is the woman who made last night slightly less horrible? I am the person who witnessed the worst New Year's Eve of this man's life," Sophie finished smoothly. "And you are?" "Marcus Thompson, best friend and professional lifesaver." Marcus shook her hand enthusiastically. "Also, person who told him to come here. So you are welcome, Alexander." "You did not know she worked here," Alexander protested. "I know, but I am taking credit anyway. Sophie, can I get whatever magic you just made for Mr. Grumpy here?" As Sophie made Marcus his cortadito, the two of them fell into easy conversation. She asked about Technova, genuinely curious about what the company did. Marcus, never one to miss an opportunity to brag about his best friend, launched into an enthusiastic explanation of their AI technology. "So you are telling me Alexander here is basically a genius?" Sophie asked, looking at him with newfound interest. "Basically? Try definitely," Marcus said. "Dude taught himself to code at 13, had his first startup at 19, sold it for $2 million by 23, and built Technova from nothing. He is too modest to tell you any of this himself." "Marcus," Alexander warned, feeling his face heat up. "What? It is true. You are a terrible self-promoter." Marcus turned back to Sophie. "He once gave a presentation to a room full of investors while running a fever of 102 because he did not want to reschedule and inconvenience anyone. That is either very dedicated or very stupid," Sophie observed. "Both," Alexander and Marcus said simultaneously. The door chimed again, and a young woman with bright blue hair and multiple piercings rushed in. "Sophie, I am so sorry I am late. The art supply store had a line around the block." "No worries, Emma. This is Alexander and Marcus. Guys, this is Emma Reeves, my roommate and the owner of this place. The famous Alexander." Emma's eyes lit up with recognition. "Sophie told me about—" She stopped abruptly when Sophie kicked her shin under the counter. "About how you appreciate good coffee." "Yes, that is what she said." Alexander caught the exchange and wondered what exactly Sophie had said about him. He found himself hoping it was not just about the rejection. "I should let you get back to your day off," Alexander said to Sophie, suddenly not wanting to overstay his welcome. "Thank you for the coffee. It really was incredible." "Any time," Sophie said, then hesitated. "Actually, if you ever want to try more of the local coffee scene, I know all the best spots. Professional hazard of the industry." Was she offering to show him around? Alexander felt something flutter in his chest that had nothing to do with caffeine. "I would like that," he said, pulling out his phone. "Can I get your number?" Sophie rattled it off, and Alexander saved it under Sophie, coffee expert. As he and Marcus left the cafe and stepped back into the bright Miami sunshine, Marcus elbowed him in the ribs. "Dude, did you just get digits from a beautiful woman less than 12 hours after Victoria dumped you?" "It is not like that," Alexander protested. "She is just being friendly." "Sure, and I am just the King of England." "Alexander, that woman looked at you like you were interesting. When is the last time someone looked at you like that?" Alexander did not have an answer. But as they walked toward Marcus's car, passing vibrant murals and hearing the distant sound of street musicians. He found himself already thinking about when he could text Sophie. Maybe this new year was not going to be so terrible after all. Alexander stared at his phone for the fourth time in 10 minutes. He had typed and deleted 3 different messages to Sophie, each one sounding worse than the last. "Just send something," Marcus said from across Alexander's office at Technova headquarters. The space overlooked Biscayne Bay, all glass walls and modern furniture, but Marcus had made himself comfortable in the expensive ergonomic chair, feet up on the desk like he owned the place. "I do not want to sound desperate," Alexander said. "Too late. You are staring at your phone like it holds the secrets of the universe. Just ask her to coffee." "We met at a coffee shop. Asking her to coffee seems redundant." Marcus threw a stress ball at Alexander's head. "Then ask her to lunch, dinner, a walk on the beach. Literally anything. The woman gave you her number. She wants you to use it." Alexander took a breath and typed quickly before he could overthink it. "Hey, Sophie, it's Alexander. Would you like to grab lunch sometime this week? I know a place." He hit send before fear could stop him. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. "She is typing," Alexander said, his voice tight. "Breathe, man. You have pitched to venture capitalists for millions of dollars. This is just lunch." Sophie's response came through, "I would love to, but fair warning, I am very judgy about food. This place better be good." Alexander felt a ridiculous smile spread across his face. "There it is," Marcus said, grinning. "The man is smitten." "I am not smitten. I am just smitten. Totally smitten. It is fine. She seems cool. Way better than Victoria, who I never liked anyway." "You never told me that." "You were dating her. What was I supposed to say? By the way, bro, your girlfriend is shallow and only cares about your money." Marcus shrugged. "You had to figure it out yourself. Though I wish it had not involved public humiliation." Alexander texted back and forth with Sophie, eventually settling on Thursday at noon. She insisted on meeting him there, rather than having him pick her up, which Alexander found both independent and slightly disappointing. He had hoped for a few extra minutes of conversation during a car ride. Thursday arrived with typical Miami weather, bright sunshine, temperatures in the mid-70s, and the kind of blue sky that belonged on a postcard. Alexander had chosen Casablanca Seafood, a local spot on the Miami River that tourists rarely found. It was not fancy, but the food was authentic, and the atmosphere was pure Miami. Casual, friendly, and unpretentious. Sophie arrived exactly on time, wearing a sundress the color of sunshine and sandals that showed off painted toenails. She looked completely different from the server uniform or the casual clothes at the coffee shop. She looked like summer personified. "Are you clean up nice?" Sophie said, eyeing his button-down shirt and jeans. "I was half expecting you to show up in a suit." "I own casual clothes," Alexander protested. "Sometimes." "Sometimes," Sophie repeated, laughing. "That is exactly what I expected you to say." They grabbed a table on the outdoor patio, right by the water where boats drifted past and seabirds called overhead. The river glittered in the sunlight, and the smell of salt water mixed with the scent of grilled fish from the kitchen. "This place is great," Sophie said, looking around with genuine appreciation. "How did you find it?" "I did not. Marcus did, actually. When I first moved to Miami for Technova, I was eating takeout every night and working until midnight. He dragged me here and told me I needed to actually experience the city I was living in, not just see it through office windows. Smart man, this Marcus. He has his moments." They ordered. Sophie got the fish tacos with mango salsa. Alexander got the grilled mahi-mahi with plantains. When the food arrived, Sophie took one bite and closed her eyes in appreciation. "Okay, you passed the food test," she announced. "These tacos are incredible." "There was a test?" Alexander asked, amused. "Always. You can tell a lot about a person by the restaurants they choose. Are they trying too hard to impress? Are they afraid to try new things? Do they actually know good food or just expensive food?" Sophie took another bite. "You clearly know the difference between good and expensive." "Victoria only ever wanted expensive," Alexander said, then immediately regretted bringing her up. "Sorry, I should not." "It is fine," Sophie said gently. "You were with her for 2 years. That does not just disappear overnight. Though between you and me, I looked her up online after you left the coffee shop." Alexander nearly choked on his water. You did? Of course I did. I am nosy and you seemed like a decent guy who got treated badly. I wanted to know what kind of person does that. Sophie leaned forward conspiratorially. She has posted 17 Instagram photos since New Year's Eve. 17. All of them with Jonathan what's-his-name. That is not someone who is in love. That is someone who is performing. Performing, Alexander repeated, the words settling over him like a revelation. That was exactly what his relationship with Victoria had been. A performance. Two people playing roles for an audience of investors and socialites and social media followers. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Sophie asked. Not for work, not to impress anyone, just for you. Alexander thought about it, and kept thinking, and came up empty. I cannot remember, he admitted. That is sad, Alexander. I know. So we are going to fix it. Sophie pulled out her phone and started typing. I am making you a list. Things to do in Miami that have nothing to do with work or fancy restaurants or impressing anyone. A list? Trust me, you need this. Her fingers flew over her screen. Okay. First, walk the Wynwood walls at sunset. The murals are completely different in that light. Second, get a Cuban sandwich from Enriqueta's sandwich shop. Not the tourist version, the real thing. Third, kayak through Oleta River State Park. Fourth, catch a street performance in Little Havana. Fifth, try to dance salsa and fail spectacularly, because everyone should fail at something publicly at least once. I already did that on New Year's Eve, Alexander said dryly. Sophie laughed. Fair point. Okay, skip the public failure. But the rest of this, you need to do. Miami is amazing and you are missing it. Will you show me? Alexander asked before he could stop himself. These places. I would like to see them. With you. Sophie looked at him, her brown eyes searching his face for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she smiled. I would like that too. But Alexander, I need to be honest with me. I am not Victoria. I am not fancy restaurants every night and designer clothes and whatever else comes with dating a CEO. I am tacos by the river and thrift store dresses and paint under my fingernails from helping Emma with gallery setups. Good, Alexander said firmly. I am tired of fancy. Fancy left me at a table alone on New Year's Eve. Then we have a deal. I will show you the real Miami if you promise to actually enjoy it, instead of checking your email every 5 minutes. I can do that, Alexander said, even though his phone had buzzed 3 times during lunch and his fingers were itching to check it. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Your phone is buzzing right now, is not it? Maybe. Check it, I know you want to. Alexander reluctantly pulled out his phone. 3 messages from Jenkins about the Riverside Capital presentation, which was now less than 4 days away. He had been putting off working on it, distracted by thoughts of Sophie and the lingering embarrassment of New Year's Eve. Work stuff, Sophie asked. Big presentation Monday. Potential investors. $15 million on the line. Sophie whistled. That is a lot of pressure. Welcome to my life. Is that why you work so much? The pressure? Or do you actually love what you do? No one had ever asked Alexander that question. Not Victoria, not even Marcus. People assumed that success meant happiness, that building a multi-million-dollar company meant he must love every minute of it. I used to love it, Alexander said slowly. When it was just me and Marcus in a garage, solving problems because they were interesting, creating something from nothing. Now it is board meetings and investor presentations and media interviews. I spend more time talking about what we do than actually doing it. So stop, Sophie said simply. I cannot just stop running my own company. Not stop running it. Stop letting it run you. There is a difference. Sophie finished her last taco and wiped her hands on her napkin. Alexander, you built something amazing. But if it is making you miserable, what is the point? Money cannot be the only reason. It is not about the money, Alexander protested. It is about, I do not know, proving something maybe. My parents thought I was crazy when I dropped out of Stanford to start my first company. They wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer or something stable. I wanted to show them I could succeed my own way. Did you? Show them? They died in a car accident 6 years ago, right before my first company sold. So no, I guess I did not. Sophie reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Her palm was warm, her touch gentle. "I am so sorry, Alexander. Thank you. It was a long time ago." But sitting there in the sunshine with Sophie's hand on his, Alexander felt the old grief rise up fresh. "Sometimes I wonder if I would have made different choices if they were still here. If I would have worked so hard, pushed so much, or if I would have just lived more." "They would be proud of you," Sophie said softly. "Even without the company and the money and all of it, they would be proud of the person you are." "You do not even know me," Alexander said, but there was no bite in it. "Just wonder at how this woman, this stranger from a week ago, could see him so clearly." "I know enough," Sophie said. "I know you tip well and say thank you to servers. I know you smile when you talk about building things. I know you are still carrying your parents with you, trying to make them proud even though they are gone. That is more than most people show on a first date." "Is this a date?" Alexander asked. "I was not sure." Sophie grinned. "Well, you bought me lunch and we talked about your feelings, so yeah, I would say this counts as a date. In that case, I should probably tell you that I had a really good time. Even the feelings part." "Me too," Sophie said. "So same time next week I will bring my list and we can start your Miami education." "I would like that," Alexander said, and he meant it more than he had meant anything in a long time. As they left the restaurant and walked toward the parking lot, Sophie suddenly stopped. "Alexander, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you ready for this? For whatever this is?" She gestured between them. "Because I like you. I think you are interesting and kind, and you need someone to remind you that life is more than work. But I do not want to be a rebound. I do not want to be the person who fixes you after Victoria, so you can go find someone else." Alexander looked at her, really looked at her, at the way the sunlight caught in her hair, at the paint stain on her sandal strap that she had probably gotten helping Emma, at the kindness in her eyes that had drawn him in from the first moment at Zuma. "I do not know what I am ready for," he admitted, "but I know that talking to you is the first time in years I have felt like myself instead of CEO Alexander Chen. So maybe we just take it slow and see where it goes?" Sophie smiled. "Slow works for me." They exchanged a slightly awkward hug goodbye, the kind where neither person is quite sure when to let go. But as Alexander drove back to his office, he found himself already counting the days until next Thursday. For the first time in a long time, he was excited about something that had nothing to do with work. The Riverside Capital presentation was supposed to be Alexander's moment of triumph. Instead, it was rapidly becoming his worst nightmare. "What do you mean the algorithm failed?" Alexander demanded, staring at his laptop screen at 2 in the morning on Sunday. The office was dark except for his desk lamp and the glow of Miami's skyline through the windows. Marcus looked like he had aged 5 years in the past hour. "The demo we were going to show on Monday, the one that is supposed to wow Jenkins and his team, crashed 3 times in testing. Ethan from engineering thinks there is a bug in the core code, but he cannot find it." Alexander's phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. "Still at the office? You promised you would get some sleep before the big day." He had been texting with her all week. Small things. Photos of street art she found. Questions about his day, funny observations about customers at Zuma. It had become the best part of his days, those little moments of connection. They had plans for Tuesday, after the presentation was done. She was going to take him to Oleta River State Park for kayaking, the first item on her Miami list. Now, looking at the crashed algorithm on his screen, Tuesday felt very far away. "Can we fix it by morning?" Alexander asked Marcus. "Maybe. If we work through the night and Ethan performs a miracle." Marcus rubbed his eyes. "But Alexander, even if we fix the bug, we have not had time to properly test it. We would be going into the biggest presentation of our lives with an unproven demo. That is risky as hell. What choice do we have? Without the demo, we have nothing. Just promises and projections. Jenkins wants to see the technology work." "Then we work," Marcus said grimly. "I will call Ethan and the team. Order pizza. This is going to be a long night." Alexander texted Sophie back. "Still here, crisis mode. Might need a rain check on Tuesday." Her response came immediately. "Want company? I make excellent stress relief coffee, and I promise not to be distracting." Alexander smiled despite the situation. "You would be very distracting, but in a good way. I should probably focus, though. Understood. Go save your company, CEO Chen. But text me if you need a pep talk. By 6 in the morning, they had found the bug. A single misplaced variable that had cascading effects through the entire system. By 8, they had fixed it. By 10, they had run successful tests 3 times in a row. We did it, Ethan said, looking simultaneously exhausted and elated. It works. Alexander felt like he could sleep for a week. Instead, he had 2 hours to shower, change, and look like a confident CEO instead of someone who had pulled an all-nighter debugging code. The presentation was at noon. Riverside Capital's offices occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, all marble floors and expensive views. Richard Jenkins, the senior partner, was a silver-haired man in his 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had made his fortune investing in tech companies in Silicon Valley before relocating to Miami. One word from him could make or break a startup. "Mr. Chen," Jenkins said, shaking Alexander's hand with a grip that felt like a test. "I have heard impressive things about Technova. Show me why I should invest $15 million. Alexander launched into the presentation he had practiced 100 times. The market analysis, the competitive advantages, the projected growth. It went smoothly until they got to the demo. "This is our flagship AI platform," Alexander explained, pulling up the interface on the large screen. "It learns and adapts in real time, creating custom solutions for each client's unique needs." "Let me show you." The screen froze. Alexander's heart stopped. No, not now. They had tested this. It had worked perfectly an hour ago. He clicked again. Nothing. Marcus shot him a panicked look from across the room. Jenkins leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Technical difficulties?" Jenkins asked mildly. "Give me 1 moment," Alexander said, his voice steady even as his mind raced. He quickly checked the connection, the settings, everything. The code was fine. The problem was the presentation laptop. It was overheating, throttling performance. In a split-second decision, Alexander pulled out his personal laptop. "Let me run it from here instead. This machine has better specs." He transferred the demo over while explaining the capabilities they would be seeing, keeping Jenkins engaged with technical details. His hands were steady, but inside, he was screaming. If this did not work, $15 million and Technova's future went out the window. The demo loaded. Alexander clicked run. For 3 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then the interface came to life, smooth and responsive, processing data in real time exactly as it was supposed to. Alexander walked Jenkins through the features, demonstrating the AI's learning capabilities, its speed, its adaptability. "Impressive," Jenkins said when the demo finished. "Very impressive. The technology is solid." Alexander felt relief wash over him. They had done it. All those sleepless nights, all that work. "But I have concerns," Jenkins continued. "Your company has grown rapidly, Mr. Chen. Sometimes too much growth too fast leads to instability. I looked at your financials. You are stretched thin. One major setback and Technova could collapse." "We have contingency plans," Alexander started. "I am sure you do, but I am going to need more time to evaluate this investment. My team will be in touch in 2 weeks with our decision." Jenkins stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Thank you for the presentation." 2 weeks, that was venture capital speak for probably no, but we will let you down gently later. Alexander and Marcus rode the elevator down in silence. When they reached the parking garage, Marcus finally spoke. "That could have gone better." "That could have gone much worse," Alexander corrected. "We did not get a no. We got a maybe. That is something. A maybe that might turn into a no while we bleed money waiting for an answer." Marcus sighed. "Sorry, I'm just tired and hungry and worried." "Me too," Alexander admitted. "On all counts." His phone buzzed. "Sophie, how did it go?" Alexander stared at the message. How did it go? They had survived. They had not failed completely, but they had not succeeded either. They were in limbo, waiting for someone else to decide their fate. He called her, instead of texting back. "Alexander." Sophie's voice was warm with concern. "What happened?" "Can I see you?" Alexander asked. "I know it is short notice, but I really need to not be alone right now." "Of course. Where are you?" "Downtown, near the courts building." "Perfect. There is a place called Bayfront Park right by there. Meet me at the big fountain in 20 minutes? Alexander found her exactly where she said, sitting on the edge of the fountain with 2 coffee cups beside her. She had somehow known he would need coffee, or maybe she just knew him well enough after a week of constant texting to predict it. That bad? Sophie asked, handing him a cup. That complicated. Alexander sat beside her, grateful for the shade of the palm trees and the sound of the fountain behind them. He told her everything, the all-nighter, the frozen demo, Jenkins' lukewarm response. So you might still get the funding, Sophie said when he finished. Or we might not. 2 weeks is a long time to wait when you are burning through capital. What happens if they say no? Alexander had been trying not to think about that. We find other investors, or we scale back operations, or we... He stopped, unable to say the word fold. Sophie was quiet for a moment, watching people walk past. Tourists taking photos, office workers on lunch breaks, a street performer playing guitar nearby. Can I tell you something that might sound harsh? Please. Maybe this is a sign. Alexander looked at her sharply. A sign to give up? A sign to reevaluate? Alexander, you have been running yourself into the ground for this company, working all night, missing sleep, stressing about investor meetings. Is this really the life you want? Because from where I am sitting, it looks like your company owns you, not the other way around. It is not that simple. Is not it? Sophie turned to face him fully. What happens if you get the 15 million? You hire more people, take on more projects, have more responsibility. When does it end? When do you get to just live? You do not understand, Alexander said, frustration creeping into his voice. I have built something important. People depend on me, employees, clients, investors who already put money in. I cannot just walk away. I am not saying walk away. I am saying maybe there is a middle ground between working yourself to death and giving up completely. Maybe you could hire a COO to handle day-to-day operations. Maybe you could focus on the parts you actually enjoy, the coding, the creation, and let someone else handle the business side. Alexander wanted to argue, but he was too tired, and somewhere deep down, he knew she was right. He had become so focused on making Technova successful that he had forgotten why he started it in the first place. I do not know how to slow down, he admitted quietly. Then learn, Sophie said gently. Start small. Like right now, for instance. You are sitting by a fountain on a beautiful day with coffee and decent company. You could check your email, or you could just be here. Present. Alive. Alexander's hand had been drifting toward his phone without him realizing it. He pulled it back. There you go, Sophie said with a small smile. Baby steps. They sat in comfortable silence watching Miami move around them. The guitarist nearby started playing a slower song, something melodic and peaceful. A family of tourists asked someone to take their photo in front of the fountain. Life continued, indifferent to Alexander's corporate crises. Sophie, Alexander said eventually. Thank you. For being here. For being honest. That is what friends do, Sophie said. Then with a slight blush, or whatever we are. Whatever we are, Alexander repeated, finding himself smiling for the first time all day. I like that. The ambiguity. The possibility. Plus, it avoids the awkward, define the relationship conversation. We are having that conversation right now. No, we are having the avoid having that conversation. Totally different. Alexander laughed, and it felt good, natural, easy. When had anything in his life last felt easy? His phone rang. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. Answer it, Sophie said. I know you want to. Alexander did. Hey, Marcus, what is up? Good news and bad news. Good news. Ethan found another bug in the code. A minor one, but if Jenkins' team does their own testing, they will find it. Bad news. Obviously, there is another bug in the code. I will come back to the office. No, Marcus said firmly. You need a break. You have been working non-stop. I will handle this with Ethan. Take the afternoon off. Actually live your life for once. Marcus, that is an order from your COO. Go enjoy Miami. I will text you if anything urgent comes up. Before Alexander could protest, Marcus hung up. Well, Sophie said, sounds like you have the afternoon free. Lucky for you, I know a great taco truck in Coral Gables, and their lunch special ends at 3. You in? Alexander looked at her. at the genuine warmth in her eyes, the easy smile, the way she seemed to exist without the weight of expectations that he carried everywhere. He thought about his empty penthouse, his inbox full of emails, the waiting and worrying that would consume him if he went back to work. "I'm in," he said. "Lead the way." As they walked toward the parking lot, Sophie reached over and took his hand. It was a simple gesture, casual and natural, but it sent a jolt through Alexander that had nothing to do with caffeine. Maybe Jenkins would say yes to the 15 million. Maybe he would say no. Either way, Alexander realized, he would be okay. Because, for the first time in years, he had something in his life that mattered beyond work. He had Sophie. And whatever this was between them, it was starting to feel like enough. Alexander was actually laughing, genuinely laughing for the first time in weeks. Sophie had just capsized her kayak in Oleta River State Park for the third time, emerging from the mangrove-lined water with leaves in her hair and an expression of mock indignation. "This is not funny," Sophie sputtered, climbing back into the kayak with considerably less grace than she had shown during her YouTube tutorial research the night before. "You said you had never done this before either." "I have not," Alexander said, paddling his perfectly stable kayak closer to help. "But I also did not claim to be an expert after watching 3 videos. 2 videos? I only watched 2. The third one was just for fun." Sophie wrung water from her ponytail. "And you know what? I am choosing to see this as character building. Very Miami of me, tropical, spontaneous. Wet," Alexander added helpfully. "That too." It was Thursday afternoon, 5 days after the Riverside Capitol presentation, and they had heard nothing. Jenkins' team was supposedly conducting due diligence, which apparently meant radio silence, while Alexander slowly lost his mind. Sophie had insisted on keeping their kayaking date, arguing that worrying would not make the answer come faster. She had been right. Out here on the water, surrounded by mangroves and manatees and Sophie's terrible kayaking skills, Alexander felt more relaxed than he had in months. They had spent the past 2 weeks seeing each other almost daily. Quick coffee breaks, late dinners after Sophie's shifts at Zuma, walks along South Beach where they talked about everything and nothing. "Race you to that dock," Sophie challenged, pointing to a weathered wooden structure about 100 yards ahead. "I cannot even stay in your kayak." "Details, on your mark, get set." Sophie took off paddling before finishing the countdown. "Cheetah!" Alexander called, but he was grinning as he chased after her. They reached the dock at almost the same time, both breathless and laughing. As they tied up their kayaks, Alexander's phone rang. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. "I should," Alexander started. "Answer it," Sophie said. "I will go find us some water from the rental shack." Alexander watched her walk away, still dripping and now limping slightly from where she had scraped her knee on the kayak. How had this woman, this stubborn, funny, genuine woman, become so important to him in just 2 weeks? "Marcus," Alexander answered. "Please tell me it is good news." "Better than good." Jenkins called. "They are in. All 15 million, pending final contracts." Marcus sounded like he was grinning through the phone. "Alexander, we did it. Technova is funded for the next 3 years. Alexander felt the relief hit him like a wave. They had done it. All those sleepless nights, all the stress, all the sacrifices, it had paid off. "That is incredible, Marcus. When do we sign?" "Next week, but there is more. Jenkins wants to introduce us to some of his Silicon Valley contacts. He thinks Technova could expand nationally within 2 years. Marcus paused. "This is huge, man. This is everything we have been working toward." "Yeah," Alexander said, but something in his chest tightened. National expansion meant more travel, more meetings, more time away from the life he was just starting to build here in Miami. More time away from Sophie. "You do not sound excited," Marcus observed. "I am. I am just processing." "Well, process fast because we have a celebration dinner tonight. My treat. 7 at Prime 112. Bring Sophie if you want." After they hung up, Alexander sat on the dock, his feet dangling over the water. He should be ecstatic. This was what he had wanted, what he had worked for. So why did he feel like he was standing at a crossroads instead of a victory? "You look like someone who just got complicated news," Sophie said, reappearing with 2 bottles of water. "Good complicated or bad complicated?" "Good, I think. We got the funding. All 15 million. Sophie's face lit up. Alexander, that is amazing. Congratulations. She hugged him, still damp and smelling like river water and sunscreen, and he held on longer than necessary. Thank you, he said into her hair. But? Sophie pulled back, studying his face. I hear a but coming. But it means national expansion. More growth, more responsibility. Everything I wanted. Alexander took a drink of water, stalling. Marcus wants to celebrate tonight. Would you come? To dinner? Of course. Though I should probably change into something that does not smell like swamp water first. Sophie sat beside him, their shoulders touching. Talk to me. What is really bothering you? Before Alexander could answer, his phone buzzed with a text, then another, then 3 more in rapid succession. That is weird, Alexander muttered, pulling out his phone. The messages were from people he had not heard from in weeks. Investors, acquaintances, even his lawyer. All of them were sending the same link to a Miami social media gossip page. He clicked it, and his heart sank. There, in high-resolution glory, was a photo of him and Sophie from yesterday. They were at a small Cuban cafe in Little Havana, and Sophie was laughing at something he had said, her hand on his arm. The caption read, Technova CEO Alexander Chen moves on fast. Just weeks after being publicly dumped by Victoria Sterling, Chen is spotted getting cozy with mysterious new woman. Who is she? Oh no, Sophie said, reading over his shoulder. That is not good. How did they even get this photo? Alexander scrolled through the comments, some supportive, many cruel, all of them speculating about Sophie's identity and intentions. Then he saw it. A comment from Victoria herself. I see Alexander is slumming it these days. How charming. That, Sophie's voice went dangerously quiet. That is incredibly rude. Alexander's phone rang. An unknown number. He answered anyway. Mr. Chen, this is Rebecca Morrison from Miami Social Magazine. I am doing a piece on your new relationship and wondered if you would like to comment on... Alexander hung up. The phone immediately rang again with another unknown number. Turn it off, Sophie said. Just turn it off. Alexander did. They sat in silence for a moment, watching a heron fish in the shallows nearby. I am sorry, Alexander finally said. I did not think about this, about what being seen with me would mean for you. The attention, the scrutiny. I'm not made of glass, Alexander. I can handle some mean comments from strangers on the internet. Sophie's jaw was set in a stubborn line. What I cannot handle is you apologizing for wanting to spend time with me. That is not what I... Is not it? Because it sounds like you are already pulling away, planning how to let me down easy before this gets too complicated. Sophie stood up, wringing out her hair again with sharp, angry movements. I knew this was risky. The rich CEO and the server. It is like a bad romance novel, but I thought you were different. I thought you actually... I love you, Alexander blurted out. Sophie froze mid-hair ring. What? I love you, Alexander repeated, standing to face her. I know it is fast and probably crazy and definitely not something you are supposed to say while standing on a kayak dock covered in mangrove leaves, but I do. I love how you make me laugh. I love how you call me out when I'm being ridiculous. I love that you tip your kayak 3 times and just laugh about it. I love... He gestured helplessly. All of it. You. I love you. Sophie stared at him. A bird called somewhere in the mangroves. Water lapped against the dock pilings. You have terrible timing, Sophie finally said. I know. And this is definitely going to complicate things. I know. And I probably should not say this back because it has only been 2 weeks and that is insane. Sophie took a breath. But I love you too. Even though you are a workaholic with a fancy penthouse and an ex-girlfriend who posts mean comments on social media, I love you. Alexander felt something in his chest expand and brighten. He kissed her, there on the dock with the Florida sun beating down and the smell of salt water and mangroves surrounding them. It was not a fairy tale kiss. It was slightly awkward because they were both still wet, and a kayak rental employee was probably watching from the shore. But it was real. When they pulled apart, Sophie was smiling. So what now? Now I turn my phone back on, deal with the chaos, and we go to dinner tonight as planned. Together. Alexander took her hand. Let them gossip. Let Victoria post whatever she wants. I do not care anymore. I am done hiding and worrying about what people think. You say that now, but wait until you see me in a fancy restaurant. I'm terrible with multiple forks. Good thing I like you terrible. They paddled back to shore, both of them soaked and happy, and completely unprepared for what was waiting in the parking lot. Victoria Sterling stood leaning against Alexander's car, looking impossibly polished in a white sundress and designer sunglasses. Jonathan Whitmore was conspicuously absent. "Alexander," Victoria said, her voice honey-sweet. "We need to talk." Sophie's hand tightened in Alexander's. "This should be interesting," she muttered. And Alexander, looking between the woman he used to think he wanted and the woman he now knew he needed, made a choice. "Victoria," he said firmly, "whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of Sophie, or you can leave. Your choice." Victoria's smile turned sharp. "Fine. I will make this simple. I made a mistake. Jonathan was boring. You were right about him. I want you back, Alexander. We were good together. We made sense." "No," Alexander said without hesitation. "We did not. Do not be hasty. I know you are angry about New Year's Eve, but surely you can see this." Victoria gestured dismissively at Sophie. "Is just a rebound. A phase. You and I, we understand each other. We are the same kind of people." "You're absolutely right," Alexander said. "We are exactly the same kind of people. We care more about appearances than authenticity. We choose success over happiness. We measure our worth by what we accomplish instead of who we are." He pulled Sophie closer. "That is exactly why we do not work. Because I do not want to be that person anymore." Victoria's face flushed. "You are making a mistake." "Maybe. But it is my mistake to make." Alexander opened his car door. "Goodbye, Victoria. I hope you find what you are looking for. Just not with me." As they drove away, leaving Victoria standing alone in the parking lot, Sophie let out a long breath. That was intense. Yeah. Also incredibly attractive. The whole standing up to your ex thing. Very romantic. Alexander laughed. "Good to know public confrontations are your love language. Only when they end with you choosing me." Sophie squeezed his hand. "So, about this celebration dinner, should I be worried about the multiple forks?" "Definitely. Prime 112 has at least 4 per place setting. Then you better teach me which one to use for salad." Or, Alexander said, making an impulsive decision, "We could skip Prime 112 and go to that taco truck you keep talking about. Just you, me, and Marcus if he is okay with street food." Sophie's smile could have lit up all of Miami. "Now you are getting it. See, I am already making you more interesting." "You really are," Alexander said. And for the first time since starting Technova, Alexander felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. 3 weeks after the Riverside Capital funding came through, Alexander sat in Sophie's tiny apartment in Coconut Grove, surrounded by crumpled papers and half-empty coffee cups. Emma had tactfully disappeared to give them space, leaving them alone with Sophie's dreams spread across the coffee table. Business plans, lease agreements, equipment quotes, bank loan applications, all stamped with the soul-crushing word denied. "I do not understand," Sophie said, her voice tight with frustration. "I have good credit. I have a solid business plan. Emma helped me with the numbers. They are perfect. Why will nobody give me a loan?" Alexander looked at the rejection letter from the third bank that month. He knew exactly why. Sophie had restaurant experience but no formal business management education. She had savings but not enough collateral. On paper, she was a risk, even though anyone who knew her could see she would make her cafe succeed through sheer determination alone. "Maybe I am being unrealistic," Sophie said quietly. "Maybe server to business owner is too big of a jump. Maybe I should just—" She stopped, blinking back tears. Alexander's heart ached watching her. This woman had shown him how to live again, had taught him that success meant nothing without happiness. Now she was giving up on her dream because banks could not see past spreadsheets to the person behind them. "I could loan you the money," Alexander said carefully. Sophie's head snapped up. "No." "Sophie—" "No, Alexander. I appreciate it, but no. I need to do this myself. If I take money from my boyfriend, then it is not really mine, is it? It is yours. I am just running your project." That is not how I would see it, but that is how everyone else would see it. Rich CEO funds his girlfriend's cute little cafe hobby. Sophie shook her head firmly. "I need to earn this the right way." Alexander understood. He had felt the same way when starting Technova, refusing family money, determined to succeed or fail on his own merits. But watching Sophie struggle when he had the means to help was torture. What if... Alexander stopped, an idea forming. What if I did not loan you money, but invested in you as a business partner? You would own majority share, say 70%. I would provide capital and business expertise. You would run everything. It would be your cafe, Sophie. I would just be helping make it happen. Sophie looked at him skeptically. Why would you want to invest in a cafe? That is not exactly your area of expertise. Because I believe in you. Because I have watched you turn casual conversations into connections, make strangers feel like family, create community wherever you go. That is exactly what makes a successful cafe. Not just good coffee, but someone who understands people. Alexander leaned forward. And honestly, I miss creating something from nothing. Technova is established now. Jenkins and his team handle most of the growth strategy. I miss the garage startup days when Marcus and I were building something we loved. You want to help me build a cafe because you miss your garage? Sophie asked, but she was smiling slightly. I want to help you build a cafe because I love you, and because this is a genuinely good investment opportunity, and because watching you give up on this dream is breaking my heart. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. 70-30 split? 70-30. You make all final decisions. Your vision, your rules. I am just the money guy and occasional business advisor. And if we break up? Sophie asked bluntly. What happens then? Alexander had not let himself think about that possibility. The idea of losing Sophie felt impossible now, like trying to imagine breathing underwater. But she was right to ask. Then you buy me out at fair market value, payment plan over 5 years. The cafe stays yours no matter what. Alexander pulled out his phone and started typing. I will have my lawyer draw up the papers, everything legal and official. This is crazy, Sophie said. We have been dating for barely a month, and you are offering to invest in my business. I have made crazier investments with worse odds. Alexander took her hand. Sophie, I am not doing this as your boyfriend. I am doing this as an investor who sees potential. The boyfriend part just means I am invested in your success beyond the financial returns. Sophie looked at the rejection letters, then at Alexander, then at her business plan. He could see her wrestling with pride and pragmatism, independence and opportunity. Okay, she finally said, but I have conditions. 1. This is a real business partnership with real contracts. 2. You do not get special boyfriend privileges at the cafe. You pay full price like everyone else. 3. If I fail, you do not bail me out. We both take the loss. Deal, Alexander said immediately, though I am negotiating for a boyfriend discount on coffee, 10% at least. 5%, final offer. Done. They shook hands formally, then both started laughing at the absurdity of it, negotiating business deals in her cramped apartment while sitting on a couch held together with duct tape. I cannot believe I am doing this, Sophie said. You are going to be amazing, Alexander told her. Just wait. 6 months from now you are going to have a line out the door, and you are going to regret investing in a cafe instead of another tech startup. Never, Alexander said firmly. His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Board meeting moved to tomorrow morning. Jenkins wants to discuss Silicon Valley expansion timeline. Sorry, man. Alexander stared at the message. Tomorrow was supposed to be the day he and Sophie went to look at potential cafe locations. They had 3 viewings scheduled. Sophie saw his expression change. Work? Board meeting. Tomorrow morning. The morning we are supposed to look at spaces, Sophie said flatly. I can reschedule. No. Sophie's voice was gentle but firm. Alexander, you are a CEO, you have responsibilities. I get that. We will look at spaces another day. But Alexander saw the disappointment in her eyes, the way she had already started closing herself off, protecting herself from the inevitable letdown, and he made a decision. Marcus can handle the board meeting, Alexander typed back. Tell Jenkins I will call him tomorrow afternoon. I have a prior commitment. He sent the message before he could second-guess himself. Sophie's eyes widened. You just blew off a board meeting for cafe location scouting? I just chose to honor a commitment I made to my business partner, Alexander corrected. The board will survive without me for one morning. You and I have a business to launch." Sophie kissed him then, and it tasted like coffee and possibility, and the start of something neither of them had planned, but both desperately needed. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for letting me be part of this," Alexander replied. Tomorrow they would look at locations. Next week, lawyers would draw up partnership agreements. In a few months, if everything went right, Sophie's cafe would open its doors. But tonight, sitting in her tiny apartment with dreams spread across the coffee table, Alexander felt richer than $15 million in funding had ever made him feel. He was building something that mattered, with someone who mattered more. 5 months later, Alexander stood inside Sophie's brew, watching the final touches come together. The cafe occupied a corner space in Wynwood, just 3 blocks from the grindhouse where they had reconnected. Exposed brick walls displayed art from local artists. Mismatched vintage furniture created cozy nooks. The espresso machine gleamed under warm lighting. "Stop looking so nervous," Sophie said, adjusting the chalkboard menu for the 3rd time. "Everything is perfect." "What if nobody comes?" Alexander asked. "Then we will drink a lot of coffee ourselves." Sophie grabbed his hand. "Alexander, we have done everything right. Good location, great product, solid marketing. Whatever happens tomorrow, we tried." Tomorrow. Opening day. After months of construction delays, permit issues, and one memorable incident involving a burst pipe that flooded the entire space 3 weeks before launch, they were finally ready. Alexander's phone buzzed. "Jenkins. Heard about your cafe venture, interesting diversification. Good luck tomorrow." Even Jenkins knew. The Miami tech community had been buzzing about Alexander Chen investing in a coffee shop. Some called it brilliant diversification. Others called it a midlife crisis at 33. Alexander did not care anymore what people called it. "Marcus just texted," Sophie said, reading her phone. "He is bringing 20 people from Technova tomorrow morning. Emma is bringing her entire art collective. We might actually have a crowd." "You deserve a crowd," Alexander said. "This place is incredible, Sophie." She had transformed her vision into reality, a neighborhood gathering space that served exceptional coffee and made everyone feel welcome. Exactly what she had described that first day at the grindhouse. "We did this together," Sophie corrected. "I could not have done this without you. The business planning, the contractor negotiations, the permits. You handled all the terrible parts so I could focus on the creative stuff." "Partnership," Alexander said simply. "Partnership," Sophie agreed, kissing him softly. The door chimed. Marcus walked in, followed by Emma and a reporter from Miami Culinary Magazine. "Hope we are not interrupting," Marcus said with a grin. But this lady insisted on an exclusive pre-opening interview. The reporter, a woman named Christina Hayes, pulled out her recorder. "Mr. Chen, Miss Bennett, Miami is fascinated by your story. Tech CEO and server fall in love. Open cafe together. It is quite romantic." "It is quite practical," Sophie said firmly. "I had a good business plan and needed capital. Alexander had capital and wanted a new challenge. The romance was just a bonus." "A very good bonus," Alexander added, earning a laugh from everyone. After the interview, after Marcus and Emma left, Alexander and Sophie stood alone in the quiet cafe. Tomorrow it would be full of noise and customers and chaos, but tonight it was just theirs. "Thank you," Sophie said softly, "for believing in me." "Thank you for teaching me how to live," Alexander replied. "I was so lost before I met you." "You were not lost, just working too hard." "Same thing," Sophie laughed. "Maybe. But you are better now. We both are." Alexander pulled her close, breathing in the smell of fresh paint and coffee beans and possibility. Outside, Miami hummed with evening traffic. Inside, they had built something real. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, success or failure, crowds or emptiness. But tonight, holding Sophie in their cafe, Alexander knew he had already won everything that mattered. "Ready for tomorrow?" Sophie asked. "With you?" "Always." 1 year later, Alexander stood in the exact same spot where everything had changed. Table 17 at Zuma, Miami. New Year's Eve again. But everything was different now. Sophie sat across from him, radiant in a simple blue dress, her hair pinned up with a pencil she had forgotten to remove after doing inventory at the cafe. She was laughing at something Marcus had just said from the neighboring table, where he sat with Emma, now his girlfriend. "Can you believe it has been a year?" Sophie asked, squeezing Alexander's hand. Alexander looked around. The same chandeliers, the same ocean view, the same expensive menu. But the man sitting here was completely different from the one who had been rejected at this very table 12 months ago. That man had measured his worth in dollars and deals. This man measured it in morning coffees with Sophie, in customers who had become friends at the cafe, in the way Marcus smiled more now that he had learned to delegate at Technova. Sophie's brew had become exactly what Sophie envisioned, a neighborhood hub where everyone knew your name and your coffee order. It was profitable, thriving, and expanding to a second location in Coral Gables next month. Alexander had never been prouder of an investment. "Speech!" Marcus called out. "Come on, Alexander. Tell us what you are grateful for this year." Alexander stood, glass in hand, looking at the small group of people who had become his family. "1 year ago, I thought my life was ending. Turns out, it was just beginning. To new starts, to taking chances, and to the woman who taught me that the best things in life are not planned, they are discovered. And to the man who finally learned that success is not just about work," Sophie added, standing beside him. "It is about who you share it with." As midnight approached and fireworks began over the bay, Alexander pulled a small box from his pocket. Sophie's eyes widened. "Alexander, Sophie Bennett, you have made this year the best of my life. You have shown me how to live, how to love, and how to make a decent cortadito." Everyone laughed. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," Sophie said through happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." The small group erupted in cheers as Alexander slipped the ring on her finger. Outside, fireworks exploded in brilliant colors, painting the Miami sky with light and promise. Last year, this table had witnessed an ending. Tonight, it witnessed a beginning. And as Alexander kissed his fiancée while their friends celebrated around them, he realized that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best ones. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what truly matters. Sometimes the person serving you coffee is actually serving you a second chance at happiness. Happy New Year indeed.